Hello, 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 and welcome to another exciting episode of Nothing Zilch Nada. We're your hosts, Xavier Dean.
And Jacob Green.
All right. Now, before we begin this episode, we're going to have a moment of silence for a recent loss that we had. And this loss is going to affect Jake a lot more than it's going to affect me. So, as I've been mentioning, this week's going to be a disc golf related episode. Well, recently, and by recently, I mean Friday, or the Friday before we recorded, the city of Streeter ended up going to one of our local disc golf courses to deal with a couple trees. One of those trees just so happens to be Jake's favorite tree. It is this dead tree that is right on top, right as you're going in on the south side of the park. You know, for about a year now, he has been fascinated by it, and I've been giving him updates. Whenever a tree falls, I let him know that, hey, guess what? It's not your tree. It's just this other tree. But unfortunately, it had to be dealt with, and it was dealt with this past Friday. So, Jake, I am so sorry
Yes,
for your loss.
yes, yes, finally, finally.
I was
Oh my,
so hoping I would be able to continue that joke for years on end, but the tree went down while I was coaching, not even when I was working like at the city part of my day. It was while I was coaching, the city went, dealt with that tree, and then one of my favorite trees that was down. So, darn. All right. Well, since we got that out of
yes.
the way, Jake, again, so sorry about your loss. Maybe one of these days we'll have a little memoriam set up in this channel for your tree. I still have all those pictures.
Yeah, but it's also the other guy. Um, it's also the other guy that we work with that wanted that tree down too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How
Yeah,
did he
the
feel
one who
about it?
you were the one who was fascinating on it more than he was. So
He was the one that first brought it up, so anything, he's the one that started the whole fiasco.
I wouldn't necessarily call it a fiasco.
Whatever. The tree is down, and I'm happy that that thing is just out of the way.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You can now mow the grass without worrying about that tree falling down.
So the funny thing is we have been mowing the grass without worrying about that tree falling down. That tree has proven that it is sturdier than half of the trees at the park. But regardless, now back to your regularly scheduled program. This week, as I've promised, we're going to be talking about disc golf. So for those of you who don't know, disc golf is a really fun sport that both Jake and I participate in. Myself more than Jake, I think. How often
I
do you
mean, I'm trying to get more into it, especially, where I'm living at right now. There is a disc golf course that I try to go every Sunday, although I haven't gone as of late either because I usually gig on the weekends, or
Mhm.
in this case, it's just been raining outside.
But that's the best time to disc golf. Got no control over your discs. Just let the wind and the rain take the field.
I'd rather have the wind control the discs in the rain.
No, you wouldn't. You would not. So I may get a little bit into that later on. For now, let's start about one of the most important aspects of disc golf, the community. So the disc golf community is filled with a lot of great people, usually within a very decent range. All of them started off somewhere. Most of them didn't start off with specifically disc golf, or at least most ones I've talked to haven't. It's usually they see someone disc golfing or a disc golfer gives them discs and they're like, huh, let's try it. And then the addiction begins. Mhm.
The good kind.
Yeah, yeah, good kind. The good kind where you're not spending all your money on things that are going to be destructive to your own health. In fact, disc golf, because it's a sport and because you're walking several miles every time you go, it's a very healthy sport.
Where you still get to spend money, but still.
Yeah, yeah, most of the time.
Mhm.
Most of the time. But regardless, there's a lot of nice people who disc golf from different fields, different backgrounds. There are some similarities with disc golfers, but generally speaking, 90% of them are nice. Only met a few that are complete a-holes. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. He's nice too. He returns discs. Just talking about one the other day,
Yeah.
which is another thing I want to bring up in case some of you are disc golfers or want to get into disc golf. So let's say you find a disc wherever you go. And that one's a horrible example. Hold on. And you've got something like this. I'm specifically holding this so that I block out my actual phone number. But you have someone's name, you might have a PDGI number, and then you have a phone number. Again, blocking it out, but you know what I mean. The respectful thing to do is to try to return the disc by calling the number. Sometimes people will just let you keep the disc, depending on how far they are or how long that disc has been lost. Um, I think that there was a disc in here. I
Yeah, I recall a situation happening once where you found a disc that was owned by somebody and you called them up and I think they were from a different state, weren't they?
Yeah, that's happened a couple times.
Hmm.
I guess I don't have one for them. I have more discs than just this, but there have been times where because disc golfers tend to go and look for disc golf courses outside of where they're from. So there will be times where I will go look for discs and I'll find discs from people who are out of state. I think so far I found ones from people from Indiana, Texas, California, Maine. I think I found one Ohio and one Florida, which is really nice for a small town in Illinois. Yep.
Really speaks to the disc golf course that we have in our hometown,
Yeah.
because as you've mentioned previously to me, that there's a lot of people, even from out of state, that come to the disc golf course because of how many trees there are.
Well, some people come because of the trees. There are people who will come yeah, because of how well maintained the course is. Like a couple months ago, I was playing at a tournament, and because Jake and I work for the city, or Jake used to, I still do. I have disc golfers coming up to me and talking to me about how well maintained our course is. There was specifically a guy from Wisconsin who specifically drives down to where we live to play the course whenever there's a tournament because he loves how you know he loves how maintained the course is. He loves it's how the trees are trimmed, how the grass is always cut. And considering there are courses around the area that don't even get touched for weeks on end until someone complains, our course tends to have it pretty good, being maintained maybe once a week. Yeah.
Yeah, the disc golf course, and I've mowed there several times, and so have you. There are certain sections of it that don't get mowed as often just because the grass grows a lot slower over there. Like there's one section that I know that we don't usually mow, that's way up on top of the cliffside. And there's just a bunch of trees over there. It barely doesn't get any sunlight. And the grass just tends to go slower over there.
So
So
recently we've been mowing the entire park when we go. Every time we go. So,
hmm.
we'll
I
hmm?
well, I find that to be interesting, particularly for this season, just because of uh we've barely gotten any rain, and when we do get rain, it's just been spotty.
Hmm.
Except in the case of this week, where there's actually been a couple of straight days where we've been getting rain.
Yeah, like right now, as we're recording, I'm looking at the rain.
I'm looking at the rain too. It's actually sprinkling pretty good right now.
Hmm. It just slowed down here.
Well,
Like,
it's picking up over here.
man.
Yeah, but to be fair, I live farther down south,
Hmm.
whereas where you're living at, you're kind of in the
Yeah.
uh, center east section. But yeah.
Yeah. So, since we now talked about the community, let's move on to the actual sport. Rules of the sport, for the most part, are very similar to golf. The goal is to make it from your tee to for us, it's a basket, and as few throws as possible. So you got this little tee pad, take your discs, this one as an example, take it, you'll throw it. Per or each throw is counted as one stroke with, you know, or each stroke is counted from one throw. You would throw then from behind where your disc lands. So it's sort of like how in golf you'll play off of the same ball, but for us we play off of different discs. So like, one of these discs could be for a longer drive, and then say you're because we go off feet instead of yards, let's say you're about 60 feet from the basket. You don't think you can putt. You could grab a mid range, throw that as an approach, and then you could throw in your putters.
Now, I have a question, and
Yes.
this just came to my mind, and I don't think I've ever asked you something like this before. So there are the three main discs that you use, depending on the distance that you're going for, where you're at in the course.
Yep.
Are there other, I'm just curious, are there any other types of discs that are kind of like, you know, they're used for like specific purposes rather than just, the driver, the mid-range, and the putter? Or
Uh,
is it just
well, yes and no. So this might actually be a great transition into actually talking about the discs. So, like we mentioned, we've got three different types of discs. We've got our putters. You know, these are usually what we throw into the basket. They've got a little bit of a wider rim. Um, so for most of the discs, they've got these flight numbers to them. First number is speed. Putters usually come within speeds from 1 through three, sometimes four, depending on the brand. So we've got what's that?
Oh no, no, I'm just paying attention.
Okay. Yep. So yeah, putter. This one is Wizard is by a company called Gateway. So yeah, but like I said, generally speaking, putters are your, you know, going into the baskets. However, sometimes, like for me specifically, you will have, or I'll have a putter sort of like this. Also, Gateway is a Chief OS, meaning Chief Overstable. As you can tell right here, we've got more numbers. We've got, like I said, this first one's the speed. It's a 3 speed. Generally, I will throw this from a farther distance than one of the other putters out, or the other putter I showed you. So you've got speed and your other three numbers. And I gotta remember how it's like speed, glide, turn, and then fade.
Hmm.
So glide talks about like how it, you know, how it flies in the air, I believe.
Hmm.
Numbers I'm still trying to work on. I know that turn for those of you who throw right-handed, that is how your disc is going to fly to the right.
Mhm.
For those of you who throw left-handed, how it flies to the left when you initially throw, which also depends on how fast you throw it. And then the final number is your fade, which is where your disc will come back to the left, or for those who throw left-handed, go back to the right. I wish I could say more about that, but I don't pay attention to numbers because everyone
Mhm.
throws each disc differently.
Hey Xavier, when you're explaining the your next disc, I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab something real quick.
All right, cool. Will do. So the next disc I'm going to talk about is a mid-range. This one is another gateway disc. It is a Karma. Uh, if you could tell from the rim, whereas a putter has a more thick, rounded rim, this one's got more of a thinner rim with a little bit of like a cuff right here. These ones tend to be more, you know, not close enough to the basket where you feel comfortable throwing it in, but you're not far enough where you want to throw something, like over 100 feet, give or take, depending on who you are. This one tends to fly a little more what we would call understable, which is where your disc is going to go more toward or more in the direction that your hand is rather than against it. So understable goes a little more that direction. Overstable goes the opposite direction. So if you throw from your right hand, your disc is going to go more left. Throw left, it'll go more right. And then stable, it's your disc is going to end up more in front of you.
Mhm.
Yep. So like I said, this one is a little more understable. So for me, it ends more, depending on how I throw it, it ends more to my right. Um, whereas something, and I want to grab a disc from a different brand. Like this is a Detour, it is by MVP Discs. This would be some, no, this is the same thing. Hang on. This right here, this is a deflector. Also, I believe this is also MVP. Yep, this one's also MVP. This one is more overstable, so this one is going to end up more to the right for me. which is where I'm answering Jake's question, where you have putters, mid ranges, and drivers. Do you have specific ones, specific things? Depending on certain flights, certain flight numbers, certain disc weights, it will depend on how your disc is going to fly. For this one, because the fade is bigger than the turn, this one is going to end up more to my left. I made sure to wait for the explanation until you came back, Jake.
Mm-hmm.
So those are mid-range discs, and then our final discs are drivers. This one is an XS. Let me quickly check what brand this one is because I don't remember what one it is. Hold on. Yeah, let me double check what it is. While waiting, fairway, this would be considered a fairway driver. There's also distance drivers. The big differences come from speeds. So I forgot about mid-range discs. Mid-range, generally speaking, a lot of companies tend to go with 4 speeds and 5 speeds as their mid-range discs. Some will go all the way 6 speeds. And then when it comes to drivers, a fairway driver will generally range from a 7 speed to a 9 speed. I personally like to expand that to 10 speeds just because of how the rim shape is. So, like, if you look at this rim, you know, just like the mid range, you've got that little bit of a hook right here. It is thinner than a mid range, and this hook isn't as close to the edge. So this one will go a little farther. Okay, this is Discraft. So this right here is a Discraft disc. Um, I will also, or we also have, I'm gonna grab this one. We also have discs like this. This is a fairway driver. If you look, it's almost as if there isn't as much of a cleft. It is a lot, it is a lot thinner. This is for faster throws. This right here is a relativity made by MVP Disc. That is a 14 and a half speed. And yes, discs can go with half speeds. And just
Mm-hmm.
like any other disc, you can have an overstable disc that'll end up to your opposite hand. You'll have understables that'll end up more towards or more in the direction of your down or your throwing hand, and then you'll have stable discs that'll end up to the front of you. Like I said, each disc has its own different, you know, each disc will fly differently based off of what the disc is, what kind of plastic it is.
How warped it is.
Yeah, how warped it is. That's another thing. Because of how these discs are, every time you hit a tree, every time you throw your disc in the water, every throw you make is going to change how your discs fly. So, for some of these discs, they can fly straight as a needle when you get them. But the more times you throw them, they're gonna end up, going more and more to your left or more and more to your right,
Mhm.
depending on which hand you throw. For me, if they go more and more to my right, they're gonna end up more understable because that's how. Because I throw right-handed.
Yeah, I also throw right-handed. Kind of the reason why I left for a bit there, and I don't know why I didn't think about this sooner, but I have all my discs with me. I always have them in the car, um, because if I'm going away on a trip, sometimes I forget to bring my discs with me, so they're always in the car, in case I'm in a situation where I want to do some disc golfing. Um, Now I don't have as many discs as Xavier does.
Yeah, this isn't even
Eh,
half of my
yeah,
discs.
yeah. At some point though, I should probably get a disc golf bag because right now I just use a normal bag or
Mm.
like a drawstring backpack. Um, but on the topic of work discs, I actually have one example of a disc that I have in my arsenal. This is a driver, and I believe I found this in the park that we usually mow. But this is a
Yep.
yeah. I know we called this the Scourge, but I think
Scorch.
this is actually yeah, it's actually Scorch. Um, but this is a Great Lakes disc, Discraft 2022. And this disc is heavily warped. But sometimes I like to use it because I've had instances in certain situations where I'll use this as my driver and it tends to work pretty well. However, because of how unwieldy it is, I try to not use it in a situation where I'm nearby a body of water
Mhm.
or thick brush. Um, which makes it a perfect disc to use at the disc golf park that I go to right now because it's very for the most part you're dealing with wide fields, unlike the disc golf park at our hometown where it's mostly trees and instances where it could get into some brush.
Yep.
Maybe yeah. By the way,
Hmm.
if you end up to anyone that wants to disc golf in a place where there's like a lot of forested areas, I recommend you grab some jeans,
Yeah.
some work appropriate shoes um, that can go through brush, and some poison ivy scrub.
Yep. Yeah, if you end up like there are going to be some wooded courses, but there are some courses, especially in the area where we're from, where if your disc ends up landing in brush, it could be around stuff like poison ivy, wild parsnip, and what I feel is the worst of it, stinging nettles. So with that, it is always great to wear long pants. Personally, I wear jeans because most of that stuff doesn't really go through jeans.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
makes
Poison oak is another thing to watch out for too.
hmm yeah. Yeah, just make sure that you're fully protected when you're going into the woods.
Mhm.
No one wants to get any, like, no one wants to get whatever this is in my arm right now.
Mhm. Yeah. Uh, if you get into that instance, take some poison ivy scrub and be prepared to take some Benadryl.
Hmm.
I've had to take it a couple times before. It's very exhausting.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, but yeah, I have all these discs. Actually, the first three, I still have them with me when I first started getting into disc golfing about 2 years ago. Got them at my first disc golf tournament that I participated in.
You know what, Jake?
Um,
Hold that thought. I have to grab two more discs. If you want to continue talking,
sure.
yep. Just like how you disappeared, I'm going to disappear for a little bit.
All right. So I guess I'm gonna talk about these in order that you would take them at. So the first one that I have is a Vandal. This one is a driver. All of these got 2023 on them. The year I went on my first disc golfing tournament. This is actually the driver that I depend on the most in any scenario. As of now, it's a pretty stable disc. Because I don't disc golf as often, um, this tends to be a very dependable disc to use. Um, and I tend to use drivers and putters over mid ranges. Occasionally, I'll use a mid range, but not as often. But this is a great starting driver to use when you're first getting into disc golf.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. And I ended up taking part in the exact same tournament. I still have this disc and the putter.
mhm.
I want to say I lost the mid range in the water where we are from.
Yeah, I still have my mid range. This is a warship.
Mhm.
Um, this one I'll use on the occasion. Again, I tend to use drivers and putters mostly over mid ranges, and I'm sure other people do too. But I guess it's a preference thing. Occasionally, I'll use a mid range, and then I have my putter, the pure. In fact, this is probably the only, but that in the mid range. I only have one of each of these, so I should if I'm when I plan on grabbing more discs, I'll probably grab more putters and maybe a couple mid ranges. Because I have mostly drivers.
Yeah.
Um, and speaking of other drivers, I actually have a couple. I already showed y'all the Scorch, but I have two Innova discs. Both of these are distant drivers. This is a Champion Orc, and this is a Champion Vulcan. And no, the champion orc isn't part of the orc army from Lord of the Rings. I'm sorry.
Man.
Yeah. Oh, in fact, I think both of these belonged to my brother. He wasn't really using these anymore, so he asked if I wanted these, and uh I have ownership of these now. This one I use fairly often. In certain instances, I'm trying to experiment with different discs right now, especially with the disc golf course I'm in, having a very open area. Um, it's always good to try out your discs and see how they handle when you first get them. This one I don't think I've used too often. In fact, just to show the drivers I use most often, I use this a lot. I've been using this fairly recently, and then I'll use this as well. And then uh, I have this one, the Escape Stable Fairway Driver, um, by Dynamic Discs. And I don't think I've used it all too often, so I should probably give this one a shot. I can't remember where I found this at. I think it was at Marilla Park. It might even me and my brother when we go to Lake Geneva, there's a great disc golf course over there. It's a very nice area. Um, Pretty open area. Mostly it's like an open area, and then it's surrounded by trees at the borders. The only thing to watch out for is that there is a creek going by. Um, Usually doesn't get too deep unless it rained recently. Um, but it's a great disc golf course either way. But yeah, those are all my discs.
All right. So unfortunately, we don't have enough time for me to show all of my discs. But I do want to take this last little bit of time to show you the first two, the two that got myself and my father into disc golf. So I've got an Innova Rock and a Gateway Wizard. I know I show a lot of Gateway. I got a friend. We actually mentioned him a couple episodes ago. We called him Bob.
Uh,
He is actually sponsored by Gateway. So whenever I take part in a league that he runs and he's got CTP or closest to pin discs, I could explain more of those in later episodes. He tends to have a bunch of these gateway discs that I haven't thrown before, so I tend to get more of them. But regardless, so I've got both of these. These were actually given to us by a local disc golfer. Wonderful guy. Great guy. Basically, my father was working on his furnace. He was given these as a tip. and he and I started disc golfing back in, I want to say, 2021. And as you can tell, the addiction continues. But I
I
will.
didn't think uh I didn't think when you got into disc golfing it was that short of a time because that's only like 4 years ago. I was thinking it was way beforehand.
No, I think beforehand, I know there was a disc golf unit in PE that I didn't do well in. And then I think I went out with you once because I think it was your eighth grade graduation. We had,
Right. It was. I remember that. Yeah.
I don't remember because I know we went to Marilla. I didn't know if we went or if we disc golfed a bit or if it was just.
I think we might have disc golfed a bit. We also walked on the forested trails. So, um, there's a property nearby belonged to my dad that's kind of next to like Marilla Park. Um, kind of interconnects with each other a little bit. Um, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, I will still play with those discs. I like to keep all of my discs in a rotation just because I have so many, and maybe one of these days I'll be able to show them all to all of you. At least most of them to all of you. There might be a couple that between now and whenever that day is may have ended up in the river. Because the river where we play always takes a disc. Almost always. Takes it 60% of the time, every time. But with that, with how time is, we do unfortunately have to cut this disc golf episode short. This is just like a little mini introduction. Maybe one of these days I'll show you more discs. Maybe I'll talk a little more about the stats of the discs when I actually do research. Maybe one of these days, like how we did that 5K and how we recorded each other running. Maybe one of these days we'll record each other playing a quick 9 holes at a course. But for now, this will be our current wrap in disc golf. Until next time. And I believe next week is Jake's topic.
I believe it is.
Yep. And if I remember correctly, he's got a really nice topic to talk about next week, which we will hear about again next week. But until then, I'm Xavier Dean,
I'm Jacob Green.
wishing you a wonderful day. Stay safe. And if you choose to, go out and disc golf. It is a really fun time. You're going to meet a lot of nice people, and you're going to curse out some trees. It's a rite of passage. It is a rite of passage. Until then, have a wonderful night. We'll see you next week.